Welcome to Hardware Asylum. I wasn't going to do a video on this particular project, partially because, I didn't think it would be very interesting, but once I dove into the internals of this particular machine and realized what I would have to do to fix it, it kind of made sense. So the real question is, what do I have? According to the bag, it says compact. And ideally, we have a compact laptop. More specifically, we have a Compaq Contura 325, which is a 386 25 megahertz, basically an SX class laptop. This laptop happened to be one of the first low-end entries into the Compaq line. Before this, they had large, big portables, and then they had some high-end portables. And the 386 was relatively popular, but it got overshadowed by the 486 and the Aero editions that came after it. When I was in college, I used a machine like this, and I kind of liked it, even though, 386 in the Pentium era is pretty much worthless. But the idea of computing on the go and, messing with some old DOS programs, even though the screen was monochrome, was kind of fun. And when this machine showed up, I was like, well, let's take a look at it. Now, as you can see, I've already taken it apart to kind of inspect. We have a Conner 120 megabyte hard drive. It's the old style with the laptop compatible IDE pins. Got power off to the side. And the cage that goes with it. The battery. Laptop of this generation is not going to be able to use this battery, but I thought maybe what I can do is 3D print a new shell or something and put some new cells in there. Gonna go to the RC shop and pick up some cells. Maybe we can make that work. If not, it's not like you need it, because we have the power brick. And this is basically how the machine gets all of its power. Standard 110 wall outlet goes to a barrel connector. This machine came with a power cord, which is nice. And I have my little baggie of parts. That's going to be important. Now, when I picked up this machine, it came with some manuals, which is pretty awesome. So we have the MS-DOS reference guide. And we also have the Compaq Contura user's guide. So this basically tells you how to use it and stuff. It's actually pretty thorough, which is pretty awesome. And it looks like there was, postcode issues. And, it's relatively thick. Let's see, we have the back cover. This thing always breaks because there's some little pins here that just kind of snap off. Although they look like they're kind of, I don't know, maybe we can put that back on. What else is in here? Nothing, alright. Inside, nothing. Oh, and I think, we'll get to that side later. And as I said, I had already taken this machine apart. So what we have here is the screen. Now, if you look carefully, there's a bunch of cracks and some separation. And along the edge, looks like there's a burn-in. So either this laptop had stayed on all the time, which, could have been a case. Or being that it came out of Texas, it just got really, really hot. And they call this vinegarine or whatever. Basically, the polarization layer that's on the screen disintegrates. It starts to decompose. Well, there's two layers of this. So some videos online talk about how you can cut this out and replace the polarization layer, and you can buy that stuff off of Amazon. But the other layer of the polarization film that's under this glass is also going to be vinegared and burned like this. So it might be viewable, but it's not going to be very viewable. Anyhow, I took it apart. We have a control board down here that controls the backlight and also the video into the screen. There was a capacitor on here that leaked, so we're going to go ahead and replace that. The hinges look like they're in pretty good shape. They twist really good. Some of the laptops in this generation, these things dry out and then they basically won't open and it'll crack the back, which is what happened with the parts machine that I got to help get some parts to put this guy back together. Here's the bottom. We have keyboard here, which is a bit yellowed, so we could probably retrobrite that, or maybe we just clean it, who knows. Underneath, this top is designed to come off because you have a user serviceable battery right there. Plus, this is how you add the modem module and the memory expansion module. Under the keyboard is also the spot for the math coprocessor. Over here is where the hard drive was. And we also have a capacitor, one capacitor on the board right there-ish. It had leaked. When I got this machine and tried to turn it on, it did not do anything. And reading a few user posts claim that this capacitor, once you get it replaced and the board cleaned up, it should work again. So we'll see how it goes. There's a lot of leakage in there, so it might have damaged some stuff. If we flip this over, this is where the battery had gone. This part normally kind of deteriorates on some of these laptops. This is actually in pretty good shape, considering, again, Texas heat, blah, blah, blah. And I'm assuming this was the company that owned it. Asset tag under the battery. Creative. Alright, what's on the other side down here? Oh. Compaq quality statements and a register now, which the registration diskette. A little floppy disk here. Pretty awesome. Some sirens in the background. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it looks like they never registered it because you're supposed to put the disk in here, fold it over, and mail it back. So, totally unregistered, illegal laptop. I'll go ahead and put that back. The case it came in, it's nice, it's nylon, it's pretty big, beefy, got a nice strap. But what we're going to do is dive into the electronics. I'm going to try to set up a webcam so that you can see as I'm soldering instead of me just, cutting to it or whatever. So let me get some of this cleaned up and we'll get to soldering. Alright, so here's that inverter board that I was talking about. It has one capacitor right there. Let's see if I can get a close-up on that there for you. And it didn't leak much, but it's leaked a little bit around the bottom. And that's the only capacitor on here, and according to the post online, all we need to do is replace that capacitor and the screen should probably work. This one is supposed to control the brightness on the screen and make sure that it stays steady, so it's pretty important to have that there. Nice thing about this laptop is everything just kind of plugs in. This is the power and reset and some activity LEDs across the top. It just has some pin headers that fit into the motherboard. This is the onboard power supply. There are a couple of caps in this power supply. We can test them, but from what I've read, this portion of it does not ever really have a problem. Somebody had been in this laptop before. There's a strap that runs from here to the screen that has a specific ground, and they had replaced it with this wire, which this is going to give you a really good ground, but obviously there must have been a problem with the screen and they got in there and repaired it. Jump cuts are pretty interesting in videos like this because you never know exactly what happened in between point A and point B. And as you can see on the bench here, things have kind of moved around and changed a bit. After I changed some capacitors on the motherboard, I had issues getting the board started. So it took a little while to trace that out, and the fact that the capacitor leakage had damaged a few traces underneath. So we put everything back together and we're going to go and do a quick power on test to make sure everything works, and then we can move on to the next stage. For that, we just hit the power button. Hard drive spinning up. And with any luck, you should see something on the screen. Yeah, we're doing a memory count. Hard drive, or floppy drive seek, and we're starting the MS-DOS. Now that our motherboard is working again, we can work on restoring the rest of this laptop and get it back together. First thing that I'd like to do is replace the CMOS battery. Now this is using a coin style, but it's not the standard CR2032. It is a CR2430. It's a little bit larger, same voltage though. The old one. The one goes in like that. The next task that we need to tackle is an issue with the hinges. The hinges on this laptop had gotten quite stiff, and as a result it broke this portion of the plastic where the hinge mounts. And as you can see, the knurled nut had started to come out, so we're going to repair that and add a little bit of reinforcement to the other side at the same time. So to repair this, we have a variety of different things that we could try. First would be acetone, assuming that this is pure ABS, and I don't believe it is because I did a slight test off camera. Didn't seem to react. We could also use super glue, but I am out of super glue that is actually working. And what I would like to do is fill in the gaps with epoxy to go and reinforce the entire area. So I think what we'll be doing here is mix up a little bit of epoxy weld, put it on the edge. We'll lock this tab back into place, and then once that has been secured, then we'll fill in the gaps with the rest of it. But to get things to stick really well, we need to rough up the edges, and I think for that I'll use my Dremel just to kind of rough it up. We want to give as much bite as possible. So on the lid, I did use some two-part epoxy to repair this corner. We glued the original plastic piece back on, and then we filled up the gap with the two-part epoxy, a little bit on this side as well. At the top, there is a piece of sponge that I put in there, and that is to push our latch back. The factory lid has a piece of plastic right here that is the sole spring to push that latch back. And of course, over time and me just moving around with everything taken apart, that piece of plastic broke. It didn't break completely, but it broke to the point where it doesn't spring back. First thing to install will be the hinges. Leave those loose because the top screw works as a ground for the screen. Overlay the LCD and inverter board. We need to make sure that our ground strap is installed. That goes under the inverter board on this metal piece right here. maybe one of the most challenging parts of this particular project is hooking up the ribbon cable. This one I found as I was messing around with the laptop is that you can not get it installed sometimes. So what we're going to do is we'll get it hooked up and then we will power on the laptop and see that everything works. Got that seated all the way. I don't think it's going to have a problem. Okay, first power on. We'll have to turn these up a little bit. It's about how I remember it. Look at that. Let's go ahead and get the rest of it buttoned up. There's a good amount of brightness on the screen, no flicker, booted directly into Windows, which is pretty awesome. I'm going to see we went ahead and fixed it. And lubricating the hinges with the lithium grease appears to have worked pretty well. It's not as stiff as it used to be, which is a good thing. And I think I'm going to go ahead and end this restoration right here. If you have any questions, please put them down in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.